Hello again, everybody. So this video is going to be addressing the Rupert Lowe situation that's happened this week. You guys probably would have heard about it on social media, and man, it is, in my opinion, fantastic. And let's get into it.
Now, what's very interesting to me is seeing the mainstream media bods and the establishment bods so desperately try and paint Restore Britain as being racist in some way. And Douglas Murray, who is always a sage voice on these things, I think has, even though he's not totally where I'm at on this, has brought some rationality to the debate today. And I want to get to that in one moment, but I want to show you the example of what's happening on the hysterical other sides.
And just to get back to that, you can see on social media this week how the whole situation has become so radicalized, so ridiculous, specifically from the socialist left and all of that ilk. How Rupert Lowe is almost a villain now because he wants England for English people. And it's absolutely ridiculous how he's seen as this white supremacist type almost, when as it stands, he's simply he's a farmer, and he's decided to speak out because he's tired of England not being for the English and the ridiculous two-tier system that is happening in the UK under Keir Starmer, and just the mass amounts of immigrants running the show pretty much, and the lack of assimilation, the lack of ownership, the lack of accountability with the socialists in the UK, and it's just ridiculous.
So you've got Daniel Finkelstein tweeting, "I wonder if Restore Britain might assist Nigel Farage. Their insistence that Britain should not be for second-generation migrants born here like myself or Zia Yusuf is and will strike most people as being an extreme position that allows Farage to position himself against it." And Mike Gray.
And I think, this is the sentiment here exactly. I think it's such a cop-out because it has got nothing to do with the fact of if you've gone to the UK illegally or legally. The problem is it's the lack of assimilation. It's the lack of people wanting to assimilate into the British culture. It's so many of these migrants, they come in there and they refuse to assimilate. They want to make Britain like the places that they came from. They don't want to assimilate. They've got no interest in it. They've got no interest in attempting to assimilate into the culture, attempting to want to find jobs, attempt to want to contribute to the society. They just want a free handout because they're quote unquote an underprivileged class, an underprivileged race, they've come from an underprivileged place in the world. So automatically that means, well, then you can just classify yourself and live in perpetuity by having a victim status. And unfortunately, the socialists love that kind of stuff. And it's not the popular view, but it's the right view with England belongs to the English. It's weird because you can take it from the other side where you as a Westerner, if you decide to go to one of these other countries, there's the understanding that, of course, I would have to assimilate. I would have to adopt the language. I would have to understand the customs in order for me to be a contributing member to that society. But the reverse, when it comes to white nations, that's not the case. You can get away with it.
Who's been very negative about Restore Britain, weighed in saying correctamundo. And you've also seen this from Matt Goodwin campaigning in Gorton and Denton, who I think again is moving himself away from prior positions, this from trigonometry.
The British people think of themselves as very tolerant, very welcoming. They're not up for let's just round up everybody who knew anything about the rape gangs, let's just round them up and put them in another country.
Now,
Sure.
Douglas Murray, I would not say in any way in The Spectator this week he was supporting Restore Britain, and indeed what he was doing was attacking the British right for falling into the same trap as the left, effectively all attacking each other. He also doesn't really personally go too hard on Nigel Farage. He does say that his position on mass deportation seems to be changing, and he gives him some credit for that. However, I do want to share with you some of the article, because I think people who are...
And this is also the problem with people like Nigel Farage, for instance. I don't know too much about Nigel Farage, but it does seem we've got a very similar kind of character here in South Africa. A man by the name of John Steenhuisen, who runs the DA party. They're part of the GNU government coalition party, headed up by the ANC. Unfortunately, they're still in power. But you've got this GNU and John Steenhuisen, who, if you had a Google search what the DA in terms of where their political alliance lies, they are portrayed as a center-right party. The thing is, it's not at all the case that they are. They are very socialist. They've got this bend towards upliftment, which sounds good on paper, at the cost of increased taxes, at the cost of putting more of the burden on the taxpayers in South Africa, on this idea of this perceived multiculturalism thing. We can take another stab at it because we haven't done it properly. And it is, once again, this white guilt that seems to perpetuate consistently the mind of socialists, to the point where the average white person is seen as the most terrible person in history, because once upon a time there was white people that had slaves. You know, once again, newsflash, every society at one point or another time in history had slaves, and the white people were the ones that banished slavery. The white people were the ones that put an end to it, and for whatever reason, these people just cannot seem to understand that and make the distinction between white people that used to have slaves that don't anymore because they abolished, and other societies up until today that still operate in slavery.
So immediately moving to attack Restore Britain supporters and claim that Restore Britain supporters are just trying to introduce race hate or something into this country would be wise to listen to the words of Douglas Murray, who wrote, following the divide over whether illegal migrants should be deported, there is another, over whether or not people who are technically British but have no love for this country, who are involved with child rape gangs,
But that's
for instance,
exactly
should be
it.
deportable.
That's where it is.
This, in turn, has opened up a schism over who counts as being British. And this is where a significant fork in the ideological road occurs. Because on the one hand, this issue risks descending into a racial purity game, something which it is hardly desirable to open up. On the other hand, it is frustrating to many people to continue to be told by parties of the political right that they have the same definition of Britishness as those concocted in the 2000s by the Blairite left.
Yeah.
This is the definition that anybody is British, so long as they sign up to British values.
Yeah, and
a set of values which defines Britishness as, for instance, mutual respect and tolerance for those with different faiths and beliefs. The problem with such definitions is that they present Britain as little more than a sort of international airport terminal, where so long as you promise not to blow up the terminal, everyone can get along.
But that's exactly right, because once again, it goes back to this idea of they're still attempting to push this multiculturalism thing. Multiculturalism doesn't work. I've got first-hand experience here in South Africa. Multiculturalism has never worked, because you've got people, this idea of, you know, societal melting pots just cannot work, because there's people that come from different cultures, that have different customs, that have different ways of looking at the world, and you will not be able to compromise with these things. There's certain things that I will not compromise because of my upbringing, because of my religion, Christianity, and because of a whole bunch of different things. You put me together with another person that's got completely different views, completely different understandings of the world, and they've got as strong a stance that I do with my views and opinions than they do with theirs. And there is no compromise. And for whatever reason, the socialists people seem to just want to ignore all of it because they are the moral bastions of the age and they know better.
And if you do try and blow up the terminal, then you get to stay too. Yet Britain was until quite recently something rather more specific and unique than that. We had a distinctive culture of our own.
Yeah.
It was different from other cultures. You
That's
don't
right.
need
And there's nothing
to
wrong with
think
it.
that it is better than all other cultures, but it was a culture which we loved because it was ours. Reducing this culture to nothing, pretending it never existed or was not created by a specific group of people or was in fact created by all cultures, is not a polite fiction. It is in fact a very impolite fiction, not least because it is impolite to the people who did build this country. There is never an easy way to heal personal differences between people who have personally fallen out. But there is a way to resolve these ideological differences that persist.
And once again, it's also the issue what really they're advocating for. It's also they're advocating for the erasure of Christianity, because Christianity built the West. If they decide that the West isn't deemed worthy of being the West anymore, they're basically saying, well, then Christianity isn't deemed worthy of being a religion anymore. And it's weird that they'll tolerate all the other religions. You know, they'll give tolerance and lip service to Islam. They'll give the same to Buddhism. They'll give the same to all of the other ones. But the very one that they were brought up with is the one that they loathe.
On the right. The first would be to agree that things that have been done to the country which are harmful can be undone. The second would be to agree that culture and background are important but cannot become absolutely everything. Anyone who is interested can take these observations copyright free. Anyone who wants to continue the infighting can, of course, equally freely ignore them.